Alright, so nagbabalik tayo sa ating violin tips and tricks. And for today's video, let's talk about improving our intonation. Ayan. This is also sort of a follow-up video on last week's episode where we talked about other cues rather than just using our ears, no? So it's the same thing, but we will focus on intonation. Ayan. So, when we talk about intonation, we always say that we need good ears, which is 100% correct. Kailangan maayos yung recognition natin ng pitch recognition. You don't need to be perfect pitch, no? Hindi kailangan naman yun. Pero you have to have the ability to understand if your tones are high, low, or just right. No? So importante talaga you train your ears. But the thing is, a lot of people has this misconception na sa tenga lang nakabase. Kailangan lang maganda yung pandinig, no? That if you can distinguish tones, you can already play in tune. No. Kasi, like what we discussed in the previous video, you have to also have this feeling in your hands. No? Importante yun. And visually, nakikita mo na tama. That you are actually looking at your fingers are placed in the correct position and you should have good spatial recognition when it comes to your fingerboard. Kailangan kabisado mo yung fingerboard mo, no? And basically what's happening with your ears is you're just listening to the output of what you saw and what you felt and what you did. Yan. So hindi lang basta maganda yung ears tas pipikit ka na, hanapin mo na yung tono. It won't help, no? Kasi it's a hit or miss thing pag ganun natin siya ginawa. If we try to locate and not find out exactly where it is. Because when it comes to pitch, no, pitch is actually relative. What do we mean by relative? It is related to where you are coming from and where you are going to. No? So any note is in tune, but if you try to keep them in a group or in a sequence, dun mo malalaman if you're out of tune or not. And we can use a tuner and in intonation, of course. Pero for me, I would suggest if you wanna really build good ears, use your tuners just to tune your open strings. Kasi, as we've said nga, pitch is relative. But you need to have these perfectly in tune para hindi ka malilito. Kasi if they aren't in tune properly, you'll have a hard time finding your notes. Okay, so again, we are not going to talk about how to get good ears, but we are going to talk about the process of actually getting better with intonation using our eyes and our sense of touch. Yun yung importante kasi, yeah, developing good ears, maraming ear training that you can do, but you have to also understand how your fingers and hands work. Kasi that's your basis for intonation in the violin, no? Bakit? Kasi our pitches change because of how we press down, no? We call this stopping. We're stopping the strings at certain lengths so that we produce a certain tone or a certain pitch. And we should be stopping them at exactly the same point and exactly the same angle. Yan. So, yung angle din ng daliri natin, importante. Because sometimes, kahit tama siya, let's say a C sharp, if I put my finger like this, it's already higher. Malaki yung chance that you might play a wrong note in the correct position just because your angles are off. No? So, yun. Importante yung nararamdaman ng daliri natin. Which part our fingers are pressing down on. If it's too high, maybe it's going to be too high. If it's like this, it's gonna be too low. No? So, yun yung mga kailangan nating intindihin. Kasi, when it comes to intonation, to be playing in tune, your hands are going to do a lot of the work. Your ears are going to do the guesswork, no? Parang i-discern niya, am I high or low? Pero dun na yun natapos. Kasi, the process in which you correct intonation doesn't come from the ears. It comes from your fingers. The way you adjust your fingers. So, nakikita mo siya. No? Let's say, I played this a little high, no? Yung C sharp na. So, narinig ko na medyo mataas siya. Ano yung pwede kong gawin? So, looking at it, the distance between my first and second finger is too far. No? So, what I do is I'll just shift it a little bit lower. Diba? So, yun. Tama na siya for me. No? And I just move my finger. So, sometimes hindi lang kailangan igalaw. You can just move the angle, no? Nandun ako, pero yung angle ko, binabaan ko. So, there are things that you have to do that doesn't involve your hearing, no? Kasi, hindi mo siya maaayos pag pinakinggan mo ng pinakinggan, no? And that stresses out a lot of students, stresses out a lot of teachers. Bakit? Laging wala sa tono, laging wala sa tono. So, kaya na wala sa tono, you're not fixing the problem, no? Because the problem is not your ears, kasi alam mo na eh. You already know that it's out of tune. The thing is, what you do with that information and where do you apply that information. So, your intonation is going to be based on how you see your fingers. Okay, narinig mo na mababa. Yung third finger ko, mababa. So, kung gusto ko siya itaas, ano yung kailangan kong gawin? Am I too close to my second finger? Ganito ba yung feeling ng knuckles ko dapat? Or dapat ba ilayo ko ng konti? Yun. So, kung nakita nyo kanina, ganun yung knuckles ko. Masyado malapit. So, I moved it. No? So, there are a lot of points of references that you can use. No? Especially with our hands. So, pwede mong gamitin yung tips of the fingers. Kasi ako, pag tumitipa ako, when I stop my strings, I really don't move the fingertips. They're just there as placeholders. All the work comes from my knuckles. Now, I also try to find this very effective for me, no? The movement of my knuckles, no? Kasi alam niya kung kailan naka-extend, and if I'm extended, I attribute that to being sharp. If I'm a little bit more constricted na nakaganon, I attribute that to either being flat or natural. So may mga ganon na pwede kang gamitin as parameters, no? So this one's flat kasi naka-extend ako pababa, di ba? B flat or F natural. It will also depend on the string where you are, di ba? Then this one is my normal finger placement. Then this one is, ayun, normal lang din. And if I wanna make it sharp, I extended this. So maraming gumagalaw. And when you feel what part of your finger is moving, you can actually like make them known na, oh, ang konting galaw nang na ganito, yung movement na space na yun, mas sanay ka na eto, I attribute this to being sharp. Or this one makes it a little bit higher. So nagiging sharp din siya or nagiging flat depending on how you move your fingers. And then you can play around with angles as well, diba? To fine-tune. Yung angles kasi mag-fine-tune sa'yo. Kasi even those small movements will really affect the sound. Maliit lang yung margin for error natin. And as we go higher up positions, diba? It's gonna be harder. Kasi it's going to be smaller. So parang ganito yung nangyayari sa kami. At first position, 1, 2, 3, 4. Second, third, fourth, fifth. Tapos habang lumalapit tayo sa dulo ng fingerboard, our hands get closer together. Diba? And as you go higher, konting movement lang. Sometimes I even have problems where a semitone is just an angle. Diba? I can also go, ayun nga, whole tone na yung differences niya. So, a good visual cue, di ba? Nakita mo na ganun na lang yung galaw ng daliri. And then you feel it bago lalabas lang yung tunog. Because we have to remember, the sound is the output. The sound is not part of the process. It's the product of the process that we did to find our intonation. Kaya if we focus so much on that sound, we have to also focus on who is producing that sound or what part of our body is producing those sounds. Kaya mas importante, alam natin lahat. I'm not saying that focusing on your ears is bad, but it's not going to help you in finding a solution if you're having a hard time with intonation. So try to consider those things. What you see, what you feel, no? How you feel that your fingerboard, di ba? Kasi your fingerboard is going to help you out, no? Yung position ng hands mo in relation to your violin may be different from others, no? Especially if you're shifting, your violin body is also going to affect, no? If you've been playing in a larger strad type na violin, your shifting would be bigger, no? If it's a Guarneri or something na smaller, yung sukat, it's going to be smaller. So those things also affect it. Pero it all boils down to seeing, feeling, and hearing. Yeah. So those three sensory, let's call it parameters, are very, very important if you want to really work on your intonation. Sana nakatulong tong video na to. If it did, like this video, share this video, and of course, comment down below for topics that you want me to discuss. And of course, my course on Udemy is still available. Check it out. My album is out on Spotify and all major music platforms. I also have a podcast on Anchor. And of course, subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content. And this has been Ryan Monakil for Violin Tips and Tricks. And I'll see you on the next video.